hot off the presses. We just got these numbers, Brendan. 57.2 million viewers for CBS on the Kansas City Chiefs Dallas Cowboys game. That was in the late afternoon window. We got 47.7 million for Fox's early afternoon game between the Packers and the Lions, and then 28 million for NBC's primetime game between the Bengals and the Ravens. Those were all records for their respective windows, and the CBS game broke the previous record for most watched regular season game in NFL history. Brendan, this is pretty much expected given the Nielsen changes, the expansion of out-of-home viewing, the big data plus panel, stuff we've talked about a lot on this podcast. But were you surprised at the magnitude of these numbers when you saw them come out?
Yes, but at the same time, I think we're all just in this zone where we don't know the reality of any of this. And I hate to always bring it back to that. Like, we should focus on this, right? I think Chiefs-Cowboys accomplishing what we thought it might by delivering a good game. And, all this, the Cowboys did the NFL a big favor by getting their act together in time for this one to pay off. Like, if it had continued to be the defensive disaster it had been earlier in the season, it probably wouldn't have gotten to this point, all that sort of stuff. Joe Burrow coming back, like everything lined up. The movement of the windows to be closer to a regular Sunday. Like, the NFL wanted this to happen. They put a lot of effort into making this, and the numbers, the audience was there for it. But I don't know if that would have been true if not for some of the, panel measurements that Nielsen does now, the out-of-home viewing, all this sort of stuff, the new platforms that the games are available on, like Peacock or Fox One or Paramount Plus or whatever. It just feels like every time I see a number like this, I can analyze it the way I just did, but then I also have not even a whisper in the back of my head, like a shouting in the back of my head that's like, this might not even be the truth. And so I end up with more questions than answers.
Yeah, you're completely right. And it doesn't even get into the fact that like some of these streaming services are measured by like a totally different company. Like Adobe will do the measurements for a lot of these streamers. So like any viewership on like Tubi or Fox One is going to be measured by a company that's not even Nielsen. And then the figures are combined. So it's a whole shit show when it comes to how these are actually measured. But the thing that did stand out to me, Brendan, was the percentage increase year over year for these games kind of far outweighs what you would expect just from, the out of home viewing and the big data plus panel boost. The Cowboys game jumped 47% year over year. Granted, that was versus last year's game, which I don't know if you remember, featured two backup quarterbacks and was like a multi-year low. For Cowboys Giants on Thanksgiving. I think that game only got around like 38 million viewers. So
that was the one where Brady went off on Daniel Jones, right? Wasn't that the whole wanting to do the practice squad safety that L. Duncan said it, and then Brady kind of hammered Jones on it, and that was like the big storyline coming out of the game because the football was such a disaster on the field.
Right. So, 47% jump from that is, I guess, not all that surprising considering the circumstances. Now you got, the two most popular viewership teams playing. They're both in the playoff hunt. It's Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, etc. But that's still a lot more than kind of the 5, 10, 15% boost that most live sports viewership is getting for the out-of-home boost. And then the Lions game, I think, is a little bit more telling even. That saw a 28% year-over-year increase. And last year's Lions-Bears game on Thanksgiving was actually a record for an early window Detroit Lions Thanksgiving game. So that one went up about 10 million from 37 million last year to 47 million this year.
Which was one of like the only good wins of Caleb's rookie season, right? So that I think that was kind of the headline of that game. Maybe people tuned in as it went on because of that aspect of it. You don't know for sure, but that makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting that it's building. It's not just a flash in the pan because of some of these wonky numbers.
Yeah. So I think, like we mentioned, it's really hard to kind of weigh the magnitude of these audiences. We don't know how much bigger in reality these numbers were compared to last year or the year before that. But I think it's safe to say that NFL's strategy this year of putting really high quality games on Thanksgiving did pay off. I mean, we've seen some real dogs of matchups in the past 5 years on Thanksgiving. I mean, I think the Cowboys and Commanders have played multiple times in that span, and the Commanders were not good until last year. The Detroit Lions were horrible until the Dan Campbell era started. So, putting these actually high quality teams in the Thanksgiving window, I think did help improve the ratings, but it is just so hard to spark, kind of suss out what these numbers actually mean.
Yeah, it's hard to say, like, outside of, I mean, you could talk about like populations in the different markets and quality of teams and stuff like that, obviously, but just like in a vacuum, like a 1995 Thanksgiving game feels like apples and like cups, to compare. It's like I don't even know how to say if are more people watching these games than back then. It feels like I can't possibly know the answer to that, even though it's more accessible than ever. And obviously sports seem to be the thing people continue to tune into over, the Thanksgiving Day parade or some of the other stuff. Like I get all that, but again, very confusing. One thing I wanted to point to here though is milking holidays clearly is working for the NFL. I mean, they've always done Thanksgiving, but as you said, scheduling real games that people care about and making this matter, having that night game, which hasn't always been there, things like that. And they're doing it on Christmas, they're doing it wherever. Every league should be learning this lesson in a real way, because there's holidays that the NFL does not dominate. And frankly, the NBA even had a really solid Christmas last year. But like I look at what NBC is going to be doing, it's a little wonky this year because 4th of July in 2026 is on a Saturday, but they're doing what they're calling a roadblock on July 5th, which will have all 30 teams playing games that will exclusively be broadcast on Peacock and NBC. And things like that, every league and network should be trying to figure out ways to manufacture attention like that. Even if it's ridiculous, even if it's preposterous, go play a game in a cornfield, go play a game at a NASCAR track, go play a game wherever. The stuff Caitlin Clark was doing at, different arenas, and they've done volleyball at football stadiums. I know that's not holidays, but if you can meld big high profile games and matchups with days that you can have attention on, that people are available to watch, like that feels like an absolute no-brainer. And it almost feels crazy that we ever unlearned that lesson, or maybe just took it for granted and stopped making it a priority. But the last thing I would say is the college football playoff doesn't seem to take full advantage of some of that stuff like they should. And that was a talking point last year. And I feel like they absolutely should be doing it. Can you do Christmas Eve? Can you do more games on the 31st than just the one that they have scheduled? Stuff like that, I think, would go a long way. And that's the lesson I take, because the NFL is going to continue to dominate. But, big picture, that's the lesson for me.
Right. I think it's just a shift in mindset from a lot of these network executives, these programmers, and these schedule makers that decide when the games are played. Because 5 years ago, you did not have out of home viewing at all accounted for in the Nielsen measurements. Now you have 100% of the country being measured for out of home viewing, and we all know it's very clear at this point. The data shows on holidays out of home viewing shoots up. I mean, it's quite obvious.
I had 15 people watching my TV out here for these games we're talking about, and that could have only gotten counted as one before.
Exactly. So there's just a lot more upside to playing on holidays now, and I think leagues and network executives are starting to realize that and act accordingly.